The wind rushed through the narrow alleyways of New Orleans' French Quarter, carrying with it the aroma of sweet bayonets, spiced gumbo, and something else, something ancient and unsettling. Camille Bryant stood at the edge of Royal Street, her fingers trembling as she clutched the small pendant hanging around her neck. The city buzzed with life, but to her, the world had grown eerily silent. She had come to the city for a fresh start, hoping to leave behind the broken fragments of her past life in Michigan. But nothing in her quiet life as a freelance illustrator had prepared her for the pull she now felt. It started a few weeks ago. Camille had rented a small apartment above a bookstore, charmed by its old-world character. The landlord, a kind elderly woman named Miss Eleanor, warned her about the strange noises at night. Camille dismissed them as creaky pipes or old building quirks. But then came the dreams. Vivid, restless dreams of firelit rooms, masked strangers, and a man whose eyes she couldn't forget. Every night the dreams grew more intense. One morning she woke up to find a single rose on her windowsill. She lived on the 3rd floor. Curious but cautious, she began researching the building and stumbled upon stories of a secret society that once operated from that very location during the late 1800s. It was said they dabbled in mysticism and rituals that blended old Creole traditions with practices brought from overseas. It seemed ridiculous, like something out of a novel. But that was before she met Ethan. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. Tall, composed, with a confidence that seemed timeless. Camille first saw him at the bookstore downstairs. He asked for a book on ancient rites. His voice had a deep, smooth resonance that seemed to pull her in. Their eyes met for just a second, but it was enough. They began running into each other more frequently, as if fate kept placing them in each other's paths. At the farmer's market, in a jazz bar on Bourbon Street, even during one of her late-night strolls. Ethan finally introduced himself and invited her to a small art gallery showing. That night, everything changed. The gallery was nestled in a hidden courtyard. Its walls were covered in paintings that felt alive. Camille was drawn to one canvas in particular, a woman who looked exactly like her, standing at the edge of a burning forest. Ethan noticed her reaction. "She's you," he whispered, sending chills down her spine. She laughed it off, but deep down, something stirred. They began spending more time together. Ethan was enigmatic, sometimes aloof, but always captivating. Camille was falling for him, even though he shared very little about his past. He listened to her, respected her space, but there was a sadness in his eyes she couldn't ignore. One evening, while walking by the river, Ethan opened up. "There are things about me you won't understand, Camille. I come from a world hidden in plain sight. A world where power has a price." She tried to laugh, assuming he was being poetic. But his gaze held no humor. He told her about a lineage of guardians tasked with maintaining the balance between two realms, our world and another, older one. The pendant she wore? It belonged to one of those guardians. Her dreams. Memories bleeding through. Camille thought it was a joke, some elaborate story he had woven, until she showed him the rose from her windowsill. He paled. "It means they've noticed you." The next few weeks were a blur. Camille was introduced to people who lived seemingly ordinary lives but were connected to this hidden world. She learned about energies, gates, and entities that watched and waited. The bookstore owner, Ms. Eleanor, turned out to be one of the guardians, retired and watchful. Camille had unknowingly stepped into a centuries-old battle. And then came Michael. He arrived like a storm. Blonde, intense, with a sharp wit and piercing eyes. He claimed to be one of the guardians too, but was more militant, more aggressive. Camille felt something around him, an energy that mirrored Ethan's but darker. He challenged Ethan openly. "You let her get too close," he accused. "You let her feel." Camille felt torn. Ethan had opened a door to a world she never knew existed. Michael offered answers, clarity, and a path to safety. But it came at a cost. Trust. Michael believed Camille was the key to restoring balance, but only if she distanced herself emotionally. Feelings, he claimed, made her vulnerable. Camille's heart broke as Ethan began to withdraw. "His right," Ethan confessed. "If they come for you, I can't protect you with love. Only with strength." But she didn't want strength without love. One night, the balance shattered. A breach opened in the city's spiritual center, drawing chaos through. The sky turned crimson. People fell ill. Shadows moved with intent. Ethan and Michael fought together, side by side, keeping Camille behind protective barriers. But the enemies knew her now. They wanted her. Camille made a choice. She stepped beyond the barrier, pendant in hand, and called them to her. It was madness, but it worked. The shadows paused. Ethan shouted for her to stop, but she pressed forward. Her mind filled with ancient words, knowledge buried in her bloodline. She spoke in a voice that wasn't hers, and the breach closed. Silence returned. Camille collapsed. She awoke days later in her apartment, Ethan by her side. Michael stood at the window, arms crossed. "You changed everything," he said, without turning. Camille didn't feel like herself anymore. She felt older, clearer, yet emotionally raw. Ethan stayed with her that night. "You were brave," he whispered. "You saved us." "But lost you," she replied. He shook his head. "You never lost me. I just needed to remember that love is not a weakness." Michael eventually left New Orleans, called to another conflict. Camille stayed. So did Ethan. They continued the work, quietly watching over the city. She illustrated by day and protected by night. The world never knew how close it came to falling apart. But in the heart of New Orleans, in an apartment above a bookstore, two souls stood guard. Caught between two worlds, bound by love, and strengthened by sacrifice, Camille and Ethan found peace in a life most would never understand. But the story didn't end there. Sometimes, late at night, a single rose still appears on the windowsill. And Camille knows the shadows are still watching, waiting for another chance. And she's ready.